All right, this seems like a good time to get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Optimal webinar and product information on 2021 Low-No Emission Funding Program. I'm Zach Walsh. I'm a sales analyst here at Optimal, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. We'll have about 45 minutes for the presentation on the product information Low-No grant program, and then we'll leave about 15 minutes for the Q&A. A bit about what we are going to discuss today, diving right into our agenda. First, we'll hear from Ben Cupp, Director of New Business Development, who will provide a brief overview of Optimal and our products that are eligible for the Low-No funding. We'll also hear from Dan Daniels, our COO. Then we'll get straight into the grant program with Jared Stoltzfus, who's Proterra's Director of Government Relations and Public Policy. He'll cover everything from how the 2021 program is different from previous years, history of funding on electric buses with Low-No, best practices, and he'll discuss the evaluation criteria and a few important considerations to keep while applying. And then we'll cover battery leasing and partnering and how that works in regards to Low-No. Just in case you haven't been on a webinar before, the Q&A box is down on the bottom. Feel free to submit questions at any time, and we will get to as many as we can. If we don't get to your question during the webinar, we will get back to you and answer after. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ben and go ahead and get today's presentation started.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate your taking the time out of your day to allow us to present this product. We are seeing an immense shift in commercial vehicle electrification as we move. Battery electric commercial vehicles are moving toward a widespread industry adaptation. The major cities making commitments to zero emission transportation, emission reduction targets. We'll talk about improving air quality and cost reductions, purchase barriers due to improved range, decline in battery costs, service proven performance, increased funding opportunities, and significant funding opportunities are available now through state and federal levels. Our company overview: Optimal was founded in 1986. We're a 33-year-old company. Our company was founded based on the pioneering of computer-aided engineering and related technologies in the automotive industry. Since 2015, Optimal has devoted itself almost fully to electrification of vehicles, lightweighting of vehicles, and autonomous driving technologies. We have recently designed and been in development with a variety of different manufacturers such as Bollinger Motors, Rivian, the Optimal E1 and S1 products, and SF Motors. Our current clientele and previous clientele, as you can see on the right, is General Motors, Ford, University of Michigan, Bollinger Motors, Rivian, Kia, and many, many others. Optimal has a global footprint with offices in Plymouth, Michigan, Elkhart, Indiana, in Europe, as well as Southeast Asia. A brief summary of the Optimal S1 product. We are a 100% power battery electric vehicle. Our key features for the Optimal S1: it is a Ford E450 dual rear wheel based battery electric vehicle. We have a liquid cooled NMC 811 chemistry battery pack that's provided by our partner Proterra Power. We have a direct drive traction motor. Our expected range is greater than 125 miles while utilizing the standard OEM suspension system from Ford with an optional MORryde RSX suspension. We do not add a kneeling feature to this vehicle. We have a low floor center section of the vehicle for wheelchair ingress and egress. We offer an optional disability ramp. Our vehicle body is a full composite construction. Roof mounted AC systems are available by region. Up to 23 seated passengers in the forward facing position or 3 wheelchairs and 12 passengers. We have a multitude of different floor plan configurations available to you. There has been significant vehicle optimization and virtual testing using CAE methodologies with our engineering team at Optimal in Plymouth, Michigan. Our design and engineering center is in Plymouth, Michigan, with our manufacturing facility in Elkhart, Indiana. Demo properties are expected in Q3 of 2021. Physical testing and certification beginning in Q3 of 2021 and start of production in Q3 2021. Some of the specifications for the Optimal S1 vehicle. The Ford stated gross vehicle weight rating for the Ford E450 chassis is 14,500 pounds. That remains the same after conversion to battery electric. Our weight class is 4 with a curb weight expected to be at 10,000 pounds. The battery pack itself is a lithium ion NMC chemistry. Our pack size is 113 kilowatt hours. Charge levels 2, 1772 compatible. Our charge system voltage is 326 volts nominally. Our drive configuration continues to be a rear wheel drive with a gradability of 30%. Our operational range is greater than 125 miles with a top speed of 70 miles per hour. As stated earlier, we can accommodate 23 forward-facing passengers or 3 wheelchair positions in the lower section of the vehicle. We do offer the disability ramp that you see deployed from the depiction to the right. Our overall length from bumper to bumper is 26.5 feet. We are CARB compliant with telematics available. We do meet Buy America standards, and we are testing to a 7-year, 200,000 mile range at the Altoona Test Track in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Other key dimensions of the vehicle, we mentioned that it is 26.5 feet long. Our wheelbase is 17.7 feet or 212 inches. Our exterior width is 101.5 inches. Interior width is 95.7 inches. Our exterior height at curb, including the air conditioner, is 9.7 feet. Our breakover angle is 9.6 degrees with a departure angle of 13.5 degrees. Our ground clearance, the lowest point on the vehicle other than the differential in the rear of the vehicle, is greater than 8 inches. Our step-in height at curb, unloaded condition is 11 inches, and at max load is 9.8 inches. Our aisle width is 19 inches. The standing height in the rear of the vehicle above the drive axle at the emergency hatch is 72.6 inches. Our minimum hip to knee spacing is 27, with door accommodations for the ramp to deploy through the door of a width of 42 inches by 79.6 inches tall. What you see here are some general views of the vehicle in a completed condition. These are the latest renderings that we have of the vehicle itself. It's a very stylish, up-to-date 21st century look to a
Ben, I think we might have lost you there.
Oh, can you hear me now, Zach?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. So what you see there is the exterior views of the Optimal S1. A top plan view, you'll notice that there are no seams on the roof. The roof itself is a seamless single sheet fiberglass component part. It is an open molded part with all the seams where they joint the sidewalls in the rear of the vehicle over the side of the truck. So we've tried to eliminate all possible leak areas on the vehicle. The windows themselves are bonded windows rather than clamp-in style windows, again, trying to address issues that we have found from our studies with those who own vehicles in the field, fleet operators, suggesting that windows that are using clamp rings are more susceptible to leakage. On the rear of the vehicle, you'll see a very large egress window with smoked Lexan panels over the taillights. Now, it is noteworthy that the taillights themselves will meet all FMVS applicable 108 standards, even through the smoked panels. But we tried to give the vehicle a little bit different look in the rear of the vehicle than your conventional cutaway product. In the front of the vehicle, you have a large observation window that is a safety glass window. We will be able to produce for our end result customers a variety of different floor plans. You'll see 4 exemplary floor plans there, forward facing, a forward facing with luggage compartment immediately behind the door, a forward facing with 3 wheelchair positions in the lower section of the vehicle, as well as a floor plan illustrating 2 wheelchair positions, a luggage rack, and forward-facing seating in the rear of the vehicle. These can be customized to your particular needs. We do offer flip seats. We can do perimeter seating. We can also do 3-step foldaways. What you see here is a cut section view of the Optimal S1. We have the lower floor section, which accommodates the wheelchair positions. We have the high rear section over the drive axle. And there is only a single step that is 9.6 inches tall from the primary floor where the wheelchair positions would be to the elevated section above the drive axle. Our product is a mixed material construction. We're utilizing a fiberglass envelope that will include vertical steel members to create a roll cage within the vehicle. It will be utilizing ultra high strength tube rolled steel that will be embedded in each of the panels and then bolted together at the joinery of the roof and sidewalls. There are 4 hoop sections across the vehicle that will provide suitable accommodations for compliance with FMVSS standards. As with battery electric vehicles, when you're comparing those to gasoline operated vehicles, if you do a study and you're utilizing 25,000 miles per year travel, an internal combustion engine with an expected mile per gallon rate of 10 miles per gallon and cost assumptions at $3.30 per gallon, we expect to reduce your cost of fuel for approximately $5,942 annually. Your maintenance costs should be reduced at a level of approximately $1,500 per year due to fewer oil and filter changes along with reduced brake wear. A bit of information about our traction motor and battery package. We have a high performance traction motor that is a direct drive. It does not have a gearbox system in it. It is fully validated and utilized in commercial buses throughout the world. Our continuous torque rating is 737 foot-pounds. Our peak torque is 1,235 foot-pounds. Our continuous power is 170 kilowatts or 227 horsepower. Our peak power is 280 kilowatts or 375 horsepower. And the voltage range for the traction motor is 300 to 750 volts of DC current. As stated earlier, we are partnering with Proterra Power to provide the power pack for our vehicles. This is a state-of-the-art battery chemistry for exceptional energy density. It's a fully validated pack. It is used throughout the United States and other countries on large bus Proterra vehicles. Proterra is the battery supplier. They are the single and only battery supplier that will be utilized for the Optimal product. The chemistry, again, is an NMC chemistry. We are cooling the system with a lit water glycol solution. This water glycol solution will be recaptured from the internal combustion engine, and there will be no negative environmental effects. We'll be reutilizing that water glycol solution in the electrified vehicle. Our energy is 113 kilowatt hours. Our cycle life is greater than 4,000 charges at 90% charge efficiency, and our temperature range is from negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit to positive 133 degrees Fahrenheit. Optimal will be providing for our end result customers flexible charging options. Our standard charging options will be an AC level 1 charge at 120 volts or an AC level 2 charging system at 240 volts, which accommodates a full charge in approximately 8 hours. We will also be making available a DC fast charge system, level 2, up to 870 volts, 60 kilowatt hours, and we can fully charge in approximately 2 hours. What you see there is a Proterra charging station. If you are a current Proterra operator and you purchase an Optimal vehicle, your charging solution is seamless. Our battery, motor, and electrical placements. You see the smoked image to the right. We have a couple of key features here, 2 high voltage electrical wires that are running down the curb side of the vehicle or door side of the vehicle. You can see those in that image, but they are enclosed inside the chassis rail. We do not have any exposure of electrical or cooling lines outside the chassis rail, nor is there any other mechanical equipment outside the chassis rail. Our traction motor is located in the rear of the vehicle with a short propeller shaft, along with the inverter. We actually turn the drive axle around 180 degrees so that we're actually pushing the vehicle rather than having the drive motor in front of the drive axle. We also have a cradle that is supporting our electrical equipment in the front of the vehicle over the center line of the front axle that you can see there with Zach's cursor. All the electrical components can be serviced through the hood or through the motor cover on the Ford E450 chassis. That particular cradle can be dismounted from the bottom if need be, along with the battery as well. This is our manufacturing facility in Elkhart, Indiana. It was purchased in October of 2020. We are now converting that building and upfitting the building for assembly of the Optimal S1 product. It's a 62,000 square foot industrial building in Elkhart, Indiana. Again, we have 6,540 square feet of offices on a parcel of 6.44 acres of land. It is fully fenced. Our clear span interior is a 16-foot eave with 16 overhead doors. We have air rotation heating and LED lighting inside the vehicle, or excuse me, inside the building. We are zoned M2 for heavy industrial, and there's been extensive renovations on this building since 2017, which include new metal walls, roof, offices, lighting, HVAC, asphalt fencing, and other things. We are currently grinding the floors, and we're going to be painting and polishing the floors within the next few days. We're also installing new loading docks and new doors in the vehicle, in the building. And you can see a pictorial of the assembly line to the lower left.
All right, thank you, Ben.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Now I'm going to turn it over to Jarrett to go over the 2021 Low-No Grant Program.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it. So I'm going to take a couple moments just go over the 2021, excuse me, Low-No program and this opportunity. I know a number of the participants on the call historically may not have pursued this program for Federal Transit Administration funding due to the lack of cutaway options being available in the market. So I realize some of this information may be new, so feel free to ask drop questions in the Q&A if you need, and I'll do my best to answer all of them. So the 2021 Low-No program, this program, Low or No Emission program, has been around for about 6 or 7 years. It's grown over time, started around 55 million, and over time it's risen to 55, 80s, 130, and then this year, 180 million. So this program is for the purchase and lease of low or no emission vehicles and related infrastructure. Eligible applicants include FTA designated recipients, states, local governmental authorities, and Indian tribes. Except for projects proposed by Indian tribes, proposals for funding in rural, non-urbanized areas must be submitted as part of a consolidated state proposal. So basically, if you're a rural applicant under FTA rules, you must submit directly through your state DOT. You cannot apply directly to FTA. There is a little, so we get questions on this a lot about, can I apply if I currently don't get FTA money? And we'll probably get some questions in the chat on this because we always do. So there's a provision there. If you see local governmental authorities, if you are a public entity, and if your public entity provides public transportation service open to the general public, then even if you do not currently receive FTA money, you are eligible to apply. So for example, a lot of sometimes public universities that run transit service, they open up to everyone. It's not just limited to students. Members of the community can ride, and it's regularly scheduled transit service. They are eligible, even though they might have not been in the mix for FTA funding. Sometimes we get like a local city that, for historic or political reasons may not be included in its region's FTA funding formula, but provides transit service that's open to the public. So in this case, those applicants, you as that type of applicant would be eligible to apply. If it is your first time and you think you fall in that criteria, we're certainly happy to answer questions on that directly. You can also reach out to FTA, and we urge you to do that early on to find out if you are indeed eligible to apply for FTA funds from this program. This program is, the applications for it are due April 12th, 11:59 through FTA, the federal government's grants.gov program. And we recommend that people submit ahead of time simply because snafus can happen. So you can work through and make sure your application gets submitted without any problems. Notice for this program by law will be by June of this year. So there's a really unique aspect to this program. If you're a recipient currently of federal funds, or you plan to receive FTA funds, normally FTA funding requires a competitive procurement as part of buying a vehicle. There's a special provision in this program that was put in place previously put in place by FTA. This last year was put in place by Congress. And basically it says that if you're an eligible recipient of a grant under this program, you may submit an application in partnerships with other entities, including a transit vehicle manufacturer. And if you win an award from FTA, it'll be treated as satisfying the requirement for a competitive procurement. So this can be really helpful for seeking for getting deployment done very quickly. Once you win the award, you're able to move forward without having to do a competitive procurement, find a state purchasing schedule with Optimal on it, or so forth. Next slide. So the program is called Low or No Emission. And theoretically, low emission vehicles are eligible. However, there's a provision in the program that requires the Secretary of Transportation to pick the projects with the most reduction of emissions and the most energy savings. When you run that, of course, a zero emission vehicle is going to reduce more emissions than a low emission vehicle. So because of that, and also because battery electric vehicles tend to be more cost competitive, almost the entire amount of the program is focused on battery electric buses, not on fuel cell vehicles, not on hybrids. So, although you're on a webinar for a zero emission cutaway, we want to stress that based on the history of the program, every single year, battery electric is the way to go. We also recommend that you propose an incremental cost application. FTA makes fairly large grants, especially for the cutaway market, but on average, and I'll go over this in a later slide, the average award floats around $2 to $3 million. So sometimes if you're already an FTA funding recipient, you're ready to get FTA formula money. A lot of times agencies apply for a grant that covers the cost difference between, say, like a diesel cutaway and a electric cutaway. So, and we can go more into that later, but especially when we talk about the average grant size. Next slide. So just to give you an example, just give you an idea of what the program's request and what your chances of winning in this program looks like. Over time, the funding requests have grown pretty substantially. The funding available has grown, although not as significantly. But in the past year, about 25% in total in terms of funding was satisfied by requests were satisfied by the funding available. Next slide. And this is probably one of the more important things for applicants. So in general, over the past couple of years, you've had between a 1 in 3 and a 1 in 4 chance of winning based on the total number of applications. 147 applications in the last year and 41 winners, which I will say is pretty good odds for the chance to win on average around $3 to $4 to $5 million. Next slide. This slide right here just shows the history of how much an average agency asks for and how much they might win. So the trend that I want to point out to you real quick here is that on average, an agency in the last year has been asking for about 3.5 million. On average, got about 3.1. In the past, FTA tended to make a large ask, take large asks, but award far smaller amounts. In the past couple of years, they basically award pretty close to what an agency might be asking for. So that being said, FTA asks for the opportunity to scale, to provide a scalable version of your application. If you, to be more competitive, it's always worth providing a version where, your application could be smaller than the full version you've provided. But in general, what we've seen is that FTA's been pretty happy about awarding grants that are pretty close to what you've asked for. Next slide. And then in terms of award size, again, in previous years, funding was all over the place in terms of its spread. In some years, FTA only made awards that were basically 1 to 2 million or 2 to 3. What this graph shows is that over time, FTA has done a spread. So if you have a small deployment, you want to buy a handful of buses, a handful of optimal cutaways, and chargers, like 3 chargers, 3 cutaways, you could do that. But FTA's grants have been of a size, at least 4 million, 5 million and up, that you could put in for a much larger deployment if you so chose. So just some thoughts on Lono trends and best practices. FTA has made smaller grants than the early days of the program. So as I said earlier, always request the largest version of your project, knowing that FTA could scale it down. Urban projects have been more competitive. So I want to just clarify this quickly for folks that have applied for FTA funding during the Trump administration. In the Trump administration, the administration had a stated very clear preference for rural and small urban projects. And in general, urban area projects did relatively poorly. With the Biden administration, we view urban applicants, those that are in, for instance, for this customer base that are applying for cutaway projects. If you're coming from an urban area, you're in a much better place. In general, though, the number of rural and small urban applicants, especially for a program like this, which is focused on zero emission vehicles, is going to be much smaller. So I want to reaffirm to anyone that's from a rural, small urban area, which is most of the folks on this phone, that your applications are still, even though the administration has changed, you're still very competitive because the number of applicants for that of your profile, are relatively limited for this zero emission deployment program. And the last thing is FTA wants projects that can be implemented earlier. FTA will rate, and they state this in the notice of funding, FTA will rate projects higher if a grant can be obligated within 12 months of selection and the project can be implemented in a reasonable time frame. Basically, this is saying, can you get the award set up within 10 months? And then can you get a stated delivery timeline and deployment timeline after that time period as well. So this language is not saying the vehicles have to be deployed and running in 12 months, but within roughly around 2 years or so from the date of award, can you, or earlier, can you have the project running? Next slide. If you've ever applied for FTA funds before, the evaluation criteria have not changed. The 6 standard ones: demonstration of need. What is your community? Why does your agency need the funds? Demonstration of benefits. What benefits does it bring to the community, to the service you're going to provide in terms of emission reduction and energy savings? Planning of local regional prioritization. Is this a project that, you know, has some planning and organization behind it? Local financial commitment. You know, when you're bringing local share, is that local share a valid hard match? Do you have local funds available? And in this case, for this project, typical federal match is 80% federal, 20% non-federal, which is usually local. If you have, say, VW funds, just wanted to provide a note that VW settlement funds actually can count as non-federal match for this program, which can be really helpful. I know a lot of folks right now are potentially struggling with lack of local funding, especially given the dynamics around the COVID-19 pandemic. Finally, project implementation strategy. You know, do you have a plan and understanding of how you would implement and deploy these vehicles? And then technical, legal, financial capacity. Do you, is your agency able, do you have the legal and the financial framework to manage federal funds? FTA always includes language on geographic diversity, having a mix of geography in terms of awards, diversity in the size of transit systems. You know, are there awards going to small and large and others? And then has an applicant received awards in previous years? I will note, so we've had applicants ask, I want a grant, you know, 2 years ago, does that mean I can't win one again? That doesn't mean successive awards are possible. We've seen applicants, for instance, since the last couple of years, win 3 or 4 years in a row. I will say that, you know, if you've won in 1 year, it does sometimes make a case that's difficult to win funding in a succeeding year. But again, there's been many instances over the past couple of years of multiple agencies winning multiple years in a row. I will say, if you're applying for funding, what you should never do is apply for money and then say, you know, apply for money and then make it a requirement that you need to win future funding to complete that project. So what you want to do, you know, you can certainly apply for multiple funding in multiple years, but it should never be for a multi-phase project. You should apply for a LONO project that is a project that you could complete with the award that you're in the year that you're applying for. There's been some changes, and I wanted to call out changes that had come with the administration change from the Biden to the Trump to the Biden administration. If you looked at the notice of funding in previous years, it included language on preferences for applications with higher local share. Wanted to make very clear that all that language on local share has been removed. There was language on rural preference. That language has been removed. Language on innovation, innovative project delivery and financing, that has also been removed. And opportunity zones. That was opportunity zones were a special provision. They were census tracts chosen by states through the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act several years ago. That preference for opportunity zone projects is gone, but it's been replaced by a sort of another sub-geographic preference that I'll discuss in a moment. Next slide. This is standard program criteria, additional standard program criteria for the LONO program. Applicants must demonstrate how the proposed project, and this is in statute, reduce energy consumption, reduce harmful emissions, and reduce direct carbon emissions. Because the optimal product is a zero emission shuttle, it reduces harmful emissions because it's zero emission, and same with carbon emissions. And it also reduces energy consumption based on the improved efficiency of an electric drive vehicle. What we can do is in the application, you'll have to provide some demonstration of these benefits. We can help do a comparative from what the optimal product will do relative to the type of product you might currently be deploying. Next slide. There were 3 additional things added by the Biden administration as this program was released shortly after the administration began. And Secretary Buttigieg started in his current role, and right after the president issued the executive order on protecting public health and environment to tackle the climate crisis. So 3 things that were added this year. The FTA administrator will consider application that may provide air quality benefits. If you're in a non-attainment or maintenance area, you should focus on and identify those for FTA. FTA will consider benefits to EJ communities. So when FTA looks at their applications, they'll note if there's any environmental justice communities, low income, populations of color, folks with disabilities, et cetera, within the proposed service area, and you should describe anticipated benefits to that population. Lastly, FTA will consider applications that include a funding request for workforce development activities that improve the technical expertise of America's transit workers. What that is FTA would like to see if you're planning to do training and workforce development as part of this project, to identify it and state it. Next slide. 2 other opportunities I just wanted to talk to you about that are not open yet, but will be in the near future. FTA's bus and bus facilities program. Optimal vehicles would be, and charging infrastructure would be eligible under this program. $414 million will be available later this year. That's not just limited to zero emission, and it also does not have the super beneficial partnering provision. But zero emission vehicles have been a relatively large part of this program over time. Previous years have been, last couple of years have been roughly 66 million of funding. And that's a lot, of additional zero emission funding on top of this program, which is in previous years been 130 to 180 million. We expect this program to come out later in spring. So while we absolutely think you should take an opportunity to chase Lono funding with Optimal through the Lono program, definitely keep an eye out for future funding opportunities. FTA's Bus and Bus Facilities program, which will provide a email notice and follow up on and a similar webinar as well. And finally, USDOT runs a multimodal program called, under the Obama administration, it was called Tiger. Under the Trump administration, it was called Build. And we're not, it probably will receive a new name, but what we do know for sure is that this program is coming out later this year, has $1 billion available, and will probably fund a number of transit projects. Zero emission, we expect to be a very big focus because of this administration's interest and DOT's interest in clean energy and climate. Next slide. Lastly, FTA does have a Lono page where you can find information from the primary source. So you can find all the program background, the application, the NOFO, and other information as well. And then FTA had a webinar yesterday. If you go to their Lono page, they posted, they held it, I believe they've not posted the recording yet, but they will shortly. If you want to watch that notice of funding that typically goes through, is typically FTA reviewing and stating the NOFO criteria. Next slide.
All right, thanks, Jarrett. And I'll leave it back with you. If you could go over the battery leasing and the partnering, as far as we will be as Optimal leasing our batteries through Proterra, and if you could go over the partnering function of the Lono program.
Yep, absolutely. So one unique thing about FTA funding and unique to zero emission vehicles is that you're actually allowed to lease power sources. So the FAST Act, which is a current transportation bill, authorized leasing batteries, and LONO projects allow acquiring a vehicle with a leased power source. So what we've done at Proterra and what we've extended to our Proterra partners like Optimal that use Proterra batteries is the ability to lease batteries. And how this works is that you would purchase an electric bus, essentially just the glider without the battery. And what that does is it usually brings the cost of the vehicle over to down to the cost of a say a fossil fuel cutaway vehicle. And then what you can then do is lease the battery over time, over the life of the vehicle. And let the savings from the fuel maintenance, so your initial capital cost is lower than it would be otherwise. Especially challenging if you're looking for, if you're trying to squeeze more money out of a LONO grant, or you're trying to like spread out your capital costs. What this would help you to do is a faster full conversion to an electric bus fleet and provide you, performance assurance across the life of the vehicle and allow you to spread the cost of the battery over time. And FTA allows the cost of the battery lease to also be paid for by FTA funds because it is considered to be a capital activity. Next slide. So one thing we just wanted to talk about in terms of partnering, and we talked about this earlier, the provision in this program to allow partnering has a number of benefits. And one of them is a streamlined approach. You can work through Optimal and partner with Proterra on things like batteries, on the vehicle. You can partner with Optimal and purchase chargers and installation services for those products as well. So you could do partner with Optimal and be able to do one consolidated application for a project with a request for funding that, and by partnering, you would meet FTA procurement requirements and you'd be able to cover everything you needed to do, including the vehicle, the purchase of the charging infrastructure, management of the charging and charger installation services, and any other technical and planning activities you needed to do. Because we know that public procurement, especially for a new technology, can be challenging. That is a reason that FTA put this provision in there. And that is a reason that, because it's helped expedite the deployment of zero emission products. So again, because you get to skip a competitive procurement through an RFP or trying to hunt around and find a statewide purchasing schedule, of which many states do not have EV products yet. This allows you to move more quickly and get your project out faster. And then also under LONO, our pricing will tend to be more competitive than often comparative state schedules. Next slide.
Well, thanks, Jarrett. That was very informative. I want to thank Ben as well. I know we covered a lot of information. So if you have any questions, we're going to hop into the Q&A now. If we don't get back to you, you can also ask questions through our website, through the contact form. You can also email sales@optimal-ev.com. We'll be happy to help. If you're not a traditional recipient of federal transit funds, we can also help you understand other funding programs such as universities, airports, and other entities just to procure electric buses. And with that being said, we'll move into the Q&A. We've had some questions come in through the presentation. So the first one we have is, what is the useful life of the bus? Ben, I'm going to give that one to you.
Our stated Altoona testing is for a 7-year, 200,000 mile Altoona equivalent testing.
Okay. I've also have here, will this recording be available after the presentation? Yes, it will. Let's see what we have here. Can you add a rear emergency door, Ben?
Yes, they will be available.
Can it be configured without a 9.6 step up?
We're talking ground to first step.
Yes.
If that is the case, our step dimensions are quite fixed because of the suspension system. We're utilizing the Ford OEM, so our unloaded step height, ground to first step, is 11 inches, and at load conditions, it's about 8.6.
Hey, Ben, this is Dan. I think they might be referring to the interior step at
Ah,
9.6.
Perhaps.
And on the interior step, unfortunately, with this vehicle configuration and chassis platform, it is not possible to eliminate the interior step.
Are there other applications other than the F-450 size vehicle, such as a Sprinter size vehicle? Ben?
Not at this time.
Okay. Jarrett, question for you. If I won a Lono grant in the past, should I apply again? I know you covered that a little bit.
Yeah. If you've won a Lono grant in the past, you absolutely can win again. Again, as I stated, we've seen applicants win multiple years in a row. That definitely, if there's been a gap in like more than 1 year, that's usually where FTA may consider like not making an award in 1 year after the next. But again, in the last administration, there were times where applicants won 3 or 4 years in a row. So I always say, look, I mean, there's with a 1 in 3 chance of win, 1 in 3 chance of winning possibly up to $4 to $5 million. I don't think it's a bad, it's a bad idea to throw in your hat in the ring and see if it'll, see if things will work out in your favor. Certainly the payout in terms of resources for your agency is pretty significant. And as stated earlier, and Ben, Zach and Ben, if you want to talk about this of how Optimal can help support the application, if when you elect to choose Optimal as your partner when you apply for Lono.
Yeah, we'll be happy to assist any agency who seeks to apply for Lono. I know there's going to be questions about the specifics of the vehicle and its capabilities. We have technical data sheets that we can provide. We have warranty information we can provide. So feel free to reach out to us through our sales portal or directly, and we'll be more than happy to help walk you through that application process.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Here's another question. How much does the ambient temperature play into the bus's range or miles? Ben?
There's going to be an effect on it. That is something that we will be working with our partner at Proterra to develop those range aspects as they relate to temperature. At this point in time, we can't give you a definitive answer, but that's something we can certainly get back to you on. Whomever has submitted that question, we will take note of it and be prepared here in the very near future to supply you an answer on that question.
Next question, will you be offering perimeter seating?
Yes, we have the ability to provide perimeter seating. I know there are a lot of applications such as airports, shuttles for pilots and things of that nature from the terminal to the parking lot that require such type applications, even vehicles configured for airport shuttles such as Enterprise. But yes, to answer your question directly, we can provide perimeter seats.
Thanks, Ben. I have a lot of questions here about the presentation being available. Yes, it will. Upon completion, I will be able to send it out to anyone that sends us a request through sales@optimal-ev.com. Next question I have here is, what is the cost range to lease batteries? Ben?
Preliminary cost figures right now on battery leasing, as it would reduce the cost of the vehicle, is approximately $50,000.
Here. Well, as of now, that looks like the questions that have been asked of. If anybody has anything else, we've got one more here. Is the battery range lease for 6 years or 12 years? Ben?
The battery, I don't know the answer to that question. I believe that it is for 6 years, but we'll have to get back to them on that as well. And I think that I might have misspoke a moment ago about the leasing question that you had on the battery. So I'll get back to the previous question in written form as well.
And well, it looks like we have that answered. We have about 5 more minutes. If we have any more questions, please send them in. We'll be happy to answer them right now. I hope we covered everything for everybody that was interested in partnering with Optimal. We can go into further detail about how to partner with Optimal and leasing batteries through Proterra. This will be available after we have answered everybody's questions. Once again, if you have other questions after the recording is sent out, please email sales@optimal-ev.com. We have another question that just came in. And what is the anticipated purchase price, Ben?
Right now, we're expecting a purchase price to the end result customer at approximately $250,000 vehicle.
Here's another question. Jarrett, this might be one for you. Are
Okay.
nonprofits eligible for Lono?
So the language for FTA is designated recipients, states, governmental entities, and Indian tribes. There may be a scenario where a nonprofit may be a designated recipient, because a lot of, as for this market, a lot of nonprofits are recipients of FTA funding for transportation services. You can be a sub-recipient. So, we've had this question before. For example, a private university wants to purchase funds, go through Lono. Based on the way the Lono program is structured, they're not eligible to apply directly. They are eligible as a sub-recipient. So if like a private entity that provides public transportation service open to the general public, which is usually rare, that's usually only a university, private university that runs bus service. If they can find a FTA designated recipient, if they can find a state or a governmental entity to apply on their behalf, then that can work. And I don't know what kind of nonprofit you are. I'm assuming you might be, the question is coming from an organization that might, a social service organization that might offer community transportation. So again, the angles here are you a current FTA recipient, designated recipient, or can you find an eligible applicant to apply on your behalf? So, and you can reach out to us and we can follow up on that, your specific scenario, and or point you to the right place at FTA to ask.
Thanks, Jared. Looks like we're coming up on time. The last question, and I can answer this one, is does the bus meet Buy America? Yes, it does. So with that being said, we've got 3 minutes now. If any more questions anyone has, feel free. The best contact to follow up with us will either be sales@optimal-ev.com. You can also contact, and I will send an email out to everybody. It's zach.walsh@optimal.com. We also have Ben Cupp, ben.cupp @optimal-ev.com. And we have Dan Daniels, DANDANIELS @optimal-ev.com. I will send that out right now. As far as the presentation goes, if you would like me to send it, as I said, send an email to sales@optimal-ev.com. I'm also more than happy to send a PDF of this presentation. We tried to get as much in as we could as far as Lono and product. We do have more product presentation that we can do. We're also happy to set up a Zoom call and go over this in further detail anytime that you need us to. So feel free to reach out to us at any time. With all of that being said, it looks like we have finished up on the questions and the chat. Jarrett, Ben, Dan, anything else you want to add before we go?
Yeah, Zach, I'll just say that I want to thank everybody for their time. I know time is a precious commodity, and I look forward to working with anyone who has a need out there. Ben?
Yeah, this is Ben Cupp. I'd like to thank everyone again as well for your time, and feel free to reach out to us at any time if we can help you in any way toward submission of your Lono grant application. We'll be happy to provide you with any information that we have available to us.
Also, I would like to thank Jared Stolfus with Proterra for his help today.
No, absolutely. And as Optimal's partner on the batteries and other parts of the Plains Zero Emission vehicle, we're happy to support and throw our expertise behind making sure that again, the cutaway folks that run cutaways. I know typically this market is, these funding opportunities have not been as open to you as they have been in the past, and we're excited to be partnered with Optimal to both get these vehicles out there and do whatever we can to help you be successful in your application to FTA. So again, please feel free to reach out, and we're here to provide technical assistance and other support.
Well, thanks, Jarrett. We're happy to be partnered with Proterra as well. So everything being said, it looks like we have come to an end now. Once again, if you have questions, I have put everybody's email address in. If you have questions or you want a copy of the presentation or you'd like to set up another call, feel free to reach out, and we are more than happy to go over this into some more detail. Thank you again, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the day and a great weekend.
Thank you so much, everyone.